Hey everybody, I wanted to return to the subject, or something related to the subject of what I talked about in my video yesterday, my positive review of Flash, or The Flash, I'm not sure which it is. A movie that's tanking, and that's I think most reviews aren't very good, and people aren't going to see it, and it's going to flop. But I still maintain that I think it's got a certain quality about it that, in spite of everything, and in spite of starring the deeply problematic Ezra Miller, I think it's going to be a cult hit in the future. I think it'll catch on and form a cult following for various reasons that I talked about in my review yesterday. Now, some of the responses that I got a lot of interesting responses from people, both online and personally, and I wanted to return to certain subjects that were brought up by some of you. The issue of stories that involve time travel and alternate universes, or multiverses, as it's been more it's more current, the term that's being used to call them. I like some of you, I see a real problem with time travel stories, in that, well, let's just take Back to the Future as the paradigmatic time travel movie. And the whole series, the whole Back to the Future series, parts 1, 2, and 3, I'm a fan of the series, at least 1 and 2. I'm not as into 3, really. The Old West doesn't really do it for me. But I like the first and second movie of that series. At the same time as liking it, finding it's entertaining and it's well made and all of that, there are some real problems with causality, and logic, that things that just don't make sense. It's not just like that they're paradoxes, it's just that they don't make sense at all. It could not work. And the thing is, whenever I bring this kind of stuff up, it just seems like I'm just, go spazzing out and going autistic, and people think I'm being tiresome. So, you are warned. If you find this sort of subject tiresome, you might as well stop watching. But if you're intrigued by the whole, if you want to see me nerd out here and talk about these things, then keep watching. So the problem with time travel movies, where it's like, oh no, you can't go back to the past or if you go back to the past, be sure not to change anything, because that could alter the whole, that could change, be sure not to do anything that would disturb the course of history, because if you do that, who knows what the consequences will be. And that's a point that gets repeated over and over in the Back to the Future movies. Here's my big problem with that, just in a nutshell. Part of the whole thing with Back to the Future, the original movie, the one that most everybody knows, that's most seen, is the idea that Marty McFly goes back in time, and he makes it so that initially he gets in the way of his parents meeting each other, and so he starts to see on a photograph that he and his siblings are disappearing slowly, because he made it so that his parents never met, and his mom is actually lusting after him, which is a funny but rather uncomfortable subplot of Back to the Future. But anyway, that's a different matter. So the problem with that, as I nerd out here, the problem with that is, if Marty goes back to the past and changes the past, and it makes it so that his parents never meet, well, then there never was a Marty, right? if you go back into the past and make it so that you never exist, then there was never a you to exist to go back into the past to change the past so that you never existed, right? That's not just a paradox. That's something that doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. And I mean, it goes for other things as well. Like if you change the course of history, like we see Marty going back to the present, and the present's totally different. This happens a couple of times. First, he goes back in the first movie, and now his parents, instead of being these trailer park dwelling pathetic losers, they're now rich and successful. And I remember that Crispin Glover actually said he had a problem with that. He was like, what are we doing here, Zemeckis? Are you saying that having his parents be successful, financially successful, that's supposed to be that's what matters, is that they're now financially successful, and they've got the upper hand on Biff, who was always the tormentor of Marty McFly's dad before that. And that was an excellent point on the part of Crispin Glover. He's a strange guy, but I like how he's thinking on that front, and in other ways too. Strangely, interestingly based guy, by the way, Crispin Glover. Check him out. Actor, the sort of oddball, eccentric actor who played Marty McFly's dad in Back to the Future, in the first one. And Zemeckis and crew, everybody who was involved with the series, came to hate him so much that they didn't want him for the rest of the films, and anyway, I won't go into that right now. There's so many different directions I can go off on, but I'm going to stay on the main route here. So all these other things, like him going back in time and changing this or that, and then it goes back to 1985, which was, for the movie, the present. And now his parents are successful, and they live in a nice house. Or, he goes back in the second movie, and now it's Biff, who some say was the model for Trump. Now it's the world where Biff controls everything, and it's this dystopian present, because Biff was able to get rich because he had the book which told, who won the World Series and so forth through the years. The problem with anything where you go back into the past and change the past and then travel back to the present and everything's different, well then what, you grew up a certain way with certain memories, but now you go back to the present and the you who had those memories is now gone. So again, it's not as dramatic a thing. It's not as obvious a thing as if you make it so that you never existed, then you never existed to go back and make it so that you never existed. It's still a problem. The problem is when you stay on the idea that there's just one history, and not that a change in time could create a different course of history, an alternate history, or a multiverse where there's tons and tons of alternate histories, where things are different in this way or in that way. By the way, I've found the idea of like infinite multiverses to be really dull, personally. Like if there's just there's just an infinite number of other worlds where things are different, then that's just like, to me, that just gets tedious, and it takes the interestingness away from these alternate universes. I find it more interesting if there's like just a couple of alternate lines of history. But here's the thing with alternate history and how it solves the problem that I described before. So if you go back in time and alter the course of history in such a way that you never existed, but it's not that you ceased to exist. It's just that you created this new timeline, right? This alternate history, this parallel universe, this parallel world where you don't exist and where other things are different as well. That gets rid of the logical conundrum that, for me has never been answered adequately. That how is it that Marty was able to, he's not going to just slowly disappear. He'll be gone, and then if he'll immediately disappear, and he can't just immediately disappear, because if he does, then he never went back. Anyway, I have already been through that already. I know I'm already becoming tedious here. So anybody who stays with me through all this, good on you. Obviously birds of a feather. If I haven't bored you yet. So if you go back and change history and make it so that there's an alternate history, that makes sense. If we have parallel worlds, parallel histories, one where you prevented yourself from existing, and one where you still exist, then it's not like, oh, there's only one history and it can change if you go back and change it. Then that immediately leads to self-contradictory scenarios. But if there's a chance of creating an alternate history, which doesn't make the history that we know cease to exist, it makes it so that there's another world with another history where things go differently, then that's different, and that makes sense. Then you can go back in time and change things, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't lead to the logical problems of, well, then how did you go back in time, who knows history as it is? How did you go back and change them? How was there you to go back in time to do that? This solves that riddle. This solves that conundrum. And that's what I found really interesting about the Flash movie, is that it created, it was this scenario in which an alternate universe was formed because the character Flash went back and, or the alter ego of Flash, the guy who is Flash, whose superhero name is Flash. He goes back, Barry, that's his name. Okay. So he goes back, and when he realizes he can go back in time, he goes back and changes this incident and makes it so that his mother doesn't get killed. But the consequences of that is that now this other timeline that he's created, which hasn't made his own timeline cease to exist, but it's just created this other timeline. And the idea, the notion, which some of you said this was ridiculous and wouldn't, just takes you out of it. For me, I thought was really interesting, which was the idea that there are other consequences whenever you create an alternate timeline, and that it's not just that the timelines diverge at the point where you changed things, but that now, something happens because of the disturbance in the space-time continuum. I don't know how to verbalize it, but just that, other things in this alternate timeline change as well, including stuff that changed before it, stuff that happened in history prior to the point of divergence. So I thought that the idea that, you know, there was this alternate history where Marty McFly was played by Eric Stoltz, who was originally cast in the role. That in this other universe, that becomes history, you know, and he becomes known as the character who played this, as the actor who played this iconic character in this alternate world. And other things happen, like new expressions crop up, like I was talking about yesterday, and I liked it so much I made it the title of my video, that I said Flash totally beeves, Beeves. This is a term that suddenly, you know, the younger Flash guy, the one from, or the Barry, the one from the newly created world where Barry's mom does not die. Suddenly he starts saying, "Oh man, this is so great. This beeves so hard." And, you know, it's like this expression which doesn't get explained, but it's again part of this alternate timeline. This how things change because of you know, just any kind of disturbance, anything which created a new timeline to begin with. I'm already being somewhat self-indulgent with this video. And maybe testing my audience's patience. I might as well just go all the way and talk about, you know, my own fiction in which I have written alternate timelines. And the one where I do this is in my book Heart Killer, where the main character manages to go back in time through some you know, sort of some mystical way, some way that's never exactly explained. It's not because of you know, there's no scientific explanation. It's not because of the flux capacitor, you know, on the DeLorean after it goes a certain speed or anything like that. He just finds a way mystically to go back in time. And he does change the past because he indulges in certain behaviors in the past, which end up having a cumulative effect, you know, which brings up the whole butterfly effect thing, of course. But the problem is with the butterfly effect, all of the problems with Back to the Future are also, if you've seen the movie The Butterfly Effect, it's far less known. All of the problems there are also problems in the butterfly effect, where he keeps trying to change things, and you know, it's like, how does he go back and change things if the world that he knew shaped him? It just doesn't. Then where was the him to go back and change, and so forth? You know, stuff I've already covered here. But in Heart Killer, I have my anti-hero go back and make it so that things are different. There's a different present, or history unfolds differently. But it's not because it doesn't mean that the world that came before ceased to be. It's an alternate world, as I try to describe in the book. Anyway, I can't believe I'm doing this. Let me just wrap things up here by saying I think the idea of multiple universes can be theologically sound if you want to, you know, if you're not really theologically oriented, then you might not care. You might not really even think about these things like this. But the idea of there being multiple universes, you know, doesn't, to me, violate anything that we know about God or the nature of God or the creative, you know, the love of God or the creative power of God. That it might be God's will that there's an alternate universe where X happens instead of Y, and so forth and so on. And there might be another you who's like you, but living in a world where things are a little bit different. And this of course, we've come full circle here. When things like what people call the Mandela effect happen, when suddenly it seems that what we always took to be an aspect of reality shifts or changes before our eyes. We that's sort of it's kind of a different thing, but at the same time it's related to me because and it's something that also I find interesting because it's something that suggests a malleability to history, that history isn't just open and shut. It just happened, and it's never going to be anything other than what it was. But that perhaps there are, perhaps we're unknowingly shifting from one alternate world to another, and that makes things even more bizarre. But I mean, I personally can't explain. I mean, I don't want to open up that can of worms because I know some people just like with lots of other things that I've been talking about here, they probably just find it boring and tedious. And for a lot of people, the Mandela effect is it's just not even worth considering. It's just, there's legit conspiracy theory, but Mandela effect is like stupid stuff. It's just like beyond what anyone should really actually consider. And I don't know. I'm willing to consider a lot of things, as long as they are logically consistent. Unlike the Back to the Future kind of change the past stuff, which my problem is that it's not logically consistent. It can't happen. It violates itself. It's self-contradicting. So thus ends my my meditation, my somewhat long-winded and hopefully not too boring meditation on time travel, alternate universes, changes, apparent historical changes, questions of whether reality can shift or whether we can shift from one reality to another. Here's what I'll end on. I don't think we're living in a simulation. That's what I balk at. Okay, that's the thing that I really I'm not prepared to stipulate. I don't believe the simulation notion. I think what we see as reality is reality, and part of that is, I think, for me, theological, based on theological presuppositions. I'm not a Gnostic. I am a believer in material reality being real, and it seems to me that's a part of being a Orthodox Christian, not Orthodox big O, but Orthodox in the sense of believing the things that Christianity has always taught, and not just Christianity, but other. I think all of the faiths that are sniffingly called Abrahamic by certain types of thinkers out there. They all have that in common, that God created the world. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? That's the first verse of Genesis 1:1. So, not a simulation, no. Reject that idea. But everything else, there's so much else that's just fair game. and it's really fascinating stuff, at least to me. Okay, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think if you made it all the way through this 25 minutes of gobbledygook. Talk to y'all soon.